My husband excluded me from our Bali honeymoon to go with his mom, but when I left my ring and went alone to Hawaii, he never expected I'd be capable of what I did next. I'm 28 years old, I work in digital marketing, and honestly, I need to tell this story because I still can't believe all of this happened to me. I mean, when people ask me why I got divorced after being married literally one day, I don't even know where to start. I guess I should go back a bit and explain how I got to this point. Because the truth is, the signs were there from the beginning. I was just too busy being the good girl I've always been to see them. I met Justin like 3 years ago, almost 3.5 years if I'm being exact. I was 25. He was 26 at the time. And he seemed perfect. You know, that kind of perfect you see in the movies. He worked in finance, was polite, looked good, said all the right things. We dated for almost 2 years before getting married, and during that time I met his family, which from the start seemed a bit intense to me, but I thought, well, they're close. That's nice. Right? My family is more laid back. My parents, Albert and Rose, are those people who let you be who you are without pressuring you, and I grew up being the eldest daughter, so I was always the one trying to keep the peace and make everyone happy. That was my first mistake, I think, because that people-pleaser mentality got me into a problem that took me a long time to get out of. Justin's mom, Janice, was one of those mothers-in-law you see in comedies, but in real life they're not funny at all. From the first time I went to dinner at their house, I felt like she was evaluating me, like measuring if I was good enough for her son. And there was another woman in the family, Denise. I don't remember exactly what relation she had. I think she was a cousin or aunt or something, but that woman was straight up cruel. At that first dinner, she made a comment about how my family probably didn't understand certain standards because we came from a more modest neighborhood, and Justin just laughed like it was a joke. I should have left right then. Seriously. But I just smiled and changed the subject because I didn't want to cause problems. Over the following months, the thing with his family kept getting weirder. Janice started calling me constantly, not to talk like normal mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but to give me advice about how I should dress, what I should cook for Justin, how I should behave at social events. Once she told me my laugh was too loud and that elegant women laugh with their mouths closed. Can you believe it? And Justin never defended me. He always said things like, "That's just how my mom is," or "She just wants the best for us." And I swallowed it all because I thought that's what you did when you loved someone. You know? You accepted their whole family, quirks and all. When we got engaged, things got worse, but I was so excited about the wedding that I didn't pay attention to the warning signs that were practically screaming in my face. The wedding planning was basically a hijacking by Justin's family. I wanted something small and intimate, maybe on the beach or in my parents' backyard, but Janice insisted it had to be at this fancy venue that cost a fortune, with a guest list of like 300 people, of which I knew, maybe 50. My family was relegated to a few tables in the back while Justin's entire extended family occupied center stage. My parents paid for half. By the way, even though Justin's family acted like they had organized and financed everything. The wedding day should have been the happiest day of my life, but looking back, it was like a theatrical performance where I was a supporting actress in my own story. Janice practically directed the entire ceremony. Denise made comments all day about how my dress wasn't elegant enough. It had cost $3,000, which for me was a lot of money. And Justin was more worried about making sure his uncles and cousins were comfortable than spending time with me. I remember at the reception we barely danced, because he spent the whole night going from table to table talking to his family. I stayed smiling at the head table like a fool, thinking, well, tomorrow we're going to Bali and everything will be perfect. Bali. That honeymoon trip we had planned for months, looking at photos of beaches and temples, booking that incredible hotel with an ocean view. We had spent a fortune on those tickets, and I had been counting down the days, literally had a countdown on my phone. The morning after the wedding, I got up super early even though we had barely slept, because our flight left at 2 inches the afternoon and I wanted to make sure everything was ready. Justin woke up, looked at me, and said, "We need to talk," in a voice that immediately gave me goosebumps. I sat on the bed, still in pajamas, and he explained very casually, like he was talking about the weather, that his family had decided to join our honeymoon, that they were going to use our reservations in Bali, all together, his mom, his dad, Denise, 2 of his uncles with their families, basically like 15 people. And then came the part that still makes me shake with rage when I remember it. He told me I wasn't going, that I needed to stay home to put things in order, organize all the wedding gifts, clean, unpack, basically do all the household chores while he went on vacation to Bali with his family. He told me this 1 hour before we were supposed to go to the airport. I sat there, processing what I had just heard, thinking it had to be a joke in very bad taste. I asked him if he was being serious, and he told me, completely serious, that it was important I understood my responsibilities as a wife and that his family needed a vacation after the stress of the wedding. The stress of the wedding that they themselves had created with all their ridiculous demands. I told him no, that this was absurd, that it was our honeymoon, and that if his family was going, at least I was going too. And he looked at me like I was a spoiled child and told me his mom had already made the decision and that I needed to grow up and accept it. Something inside me broke at that moment. It wasn't like a dramatic explosion. It was more like when a thread breaks and suddenly everything falls. I watched him pack his suitcase. I heard how he called his mom to confirm everything was ready. And when he left the house heading to the airport, I stood there in the living room, surrounded by unopened wedding gift boxes, feeling like I had just woken up from a very long and very stupid dream. I waited exactly 2 hours after he left. 2 hours in which I sat on the couch, crying, thinking about my whole life and how I had gotten to this point. Then I dried my tears, grabbed my laptop, and booked a flight to Hawaii. My parents have a vacation home in Maui. It's nothing fancy, but it's beautiful, right on the beach. I called my mom, told her what had happened. She got furious. By the way, I had never heard her so angry. And she told me to go to the house, that I had permission to decide, use the house as long as I needed. I packed a suitcase, left my wedding ring on the kitchen table with a note that said, "Enjoy Bali," locked the door, and left. The flight to Hawaii was surreal. I kept expecting Justin to call, to realize how ridiculous he had been, to apologize, but there was no call. I arrived in Maui, like at 11 at night, took an Uber to my parents' house, and when I walked in and saw the ocean through the windows, I just fell apart. I cried like I hadn't cried in years, like that ugly crying where you can't breathe and your chest hurts. But after crying for like 2 hours, I made myself some tea, sat on the terrace, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I spent 2 weeks in Hawaii. 2 weeks in which I turned off my phone most of the time. Swam in the ocean every day. Tried surfing. I'm terrible at it, but it was fun. Ate what I wanted when I wanted. And basically remembered who I was before I became this version of myself that just wanted to please everyone. My friend Kristen, who is like my sister basically, called me every 2 days to make sure I was okay. And my parents sent me constant messages of support. I didn't talk to Justin once. When I finally turned on my phone after the first week, I had literally hundreds of messages, and they weren't worried messages asking if I was okay. No. They were angry messages from Justin, from Janice, from Denise, even from Justin's relatives I didn't even know well, all demanding I come home immediately, that I apologize for ruining the honeymoon, that I was being selfish and immature. Janice had left me like 40 voicemails, some crying saying I had broken her son's heart, others yelling that I was a terrible wife. Denise sent me a message saying my family must be proud to have raised someone so irresponsible. It was total madness. I didn't respond to them. I blocked most of their numbers, left only Justin's unblocked in case he really needed to talk to me about something important, and kept enjoying my vacation. Because that's what it was. A vacation I deserved and that had been taken from me. I went back home after 2 weeks, feeling more mentally clear than I had felt in years. I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't go back to the house I shared with Justin. Instead, I went straight to Kristen's apartment, who had told me I could stay with her as long as I needed. Kristen is a lawyer, by the way, and when I told her the whole story, she immediately told me, "You need to get divorced," and I already knew it, honestly, but hearing it from someone else gave me the final push I needed. I stayed at her apartment for like a week, going to the house when Justin wasn't there to pick up my most important things. But of course, Justin's family wasn't going to leave me alone that easily. One afternoon, while I was at Kristen's apartment, my mom called me hysterical. Turns out, Janice, Denise, and like 5 more members of Justin's family had shown up at my parents' house, knocking on the door, yelling, demanding they return me to my husband. My parents live in a quiet neighborhood, like those streets where everyone knows each other and nothing ever happens. And suddenly, they had this horde of people making a scene at their door. The neighbors came out to see what was happening. Someone threatened to call the police. It was a complete disaster. My parents, who are the most peaceful people in the world, had to deal with that. And when my mom told me about it, I felt a fury. I didn't know I was capable of feeling. I called Justin. It was the first time we talked since I had left. I told him he needed to control his family, that they had gone to harass my parents, and that was completely unacceptable. And you know what he told me? He told me it was all my fault. That if I had been a good wife and stayed home to do the chores like I was supposed to, none of this would have happened. That his family was just worried about him. So I told him something I had been holding back for a long time. I said I wasn't going to apologize for anything. That he and his family owed me a huge apology, and that if I didn't get it, he could expect divorce papers very soon. He was quiet for a moment, I think expecting me to take it back or something. But when he saw I was serious, he started yelling at me, calling me selfish, telling me I had ruined our marriage, that his family had been right about me from the beginning. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of liberation and sadness, because I was basically confirming that my one-day marriage was over, but I also knew it was the right thing to do. I moved back in with my parents temporarily, not because I couldn't stay with Kristen, but because after what had happened, I wanted to be near them and make sure Justin's family didn't bother them again. My parents were incredible, as always. My dad told me he was proud of me for standing up for my dignity, and my mom basically hugged me and let me cry as much as I needed. It was weird being back in my childhood room at 28 years old, newly married, but already starting a divorce. But honestly, I felt safer there than anywhere else. It was during those weeks that I met Pam. Pam was Justin's ex-girlfriend. They had dated for like 3 years before he and I met. We ran into each other by chance at a coffee shop. She recognized me because she had seen photos of the wedding on social media, which I had already deleted all of them. But you know how the internet is? Things keep floating around. She approached me, asked if we could talk, and what she told me basically confirmed that I wasn't crazy and that all this was a pattern. Pam told me that when she was with Justin, exactly the same thing had happened to her, that Janice and the rest of the family controlled her, told her how to dress, how to speak, what to do. That Justin never defended her and always put his family first. That when she finally got fed up and ended the relationship, the family harassed her for months, showing up at her work, calling her parents, trying to make her feel guilty. She showed me old messages, emails. It was basically the same script but with a different actress. She told me she had gone to therapy after that relationship because it had made her doubt her own sanity, and that seeing that I was going through the same thing broke her heart. We talked for like 3 hours, and when we said goodbye, she told me, "Don't let them make you feel small. You're worth so much more than all this." I cried in the car on the way home, but they were tears of validation, because I finally had confirmation that I wasn't the problem. I hired a lawyer. His name was Andrew Foster. Kristen recommended him to me, and he was that kind of lawyer who inspires confidence immediately. I told him the whole story, showed him the threatening messages from Justin's family, talked to him about the harassment of my parents, everything. He told me I had a solid case and that, given the marriage had lasted literally 1 day and we had no shared property or children, the divorce could be relatively simple if Justin cooperated. The problem, obviously, was that Justin wasn't going to cooperate easily, not with his family pressuring him. Andrew prepared the papers and gave them to me to review. It was weird, very weird, holding those documents that basically said my marriage had been a one-day mistake. I signed where I had to sign, with my hand shaking a little because even though I knew it was the right thing, it was still difficult. Andrew told me he would take care of sending the papers to Justin and handling all the communication, that I didn't have to talk to him at all if I didn't want to. It was a huge relief. While all this was happening, I tried to continue with my life as normally as possible. I went back to work, which was awkward because everyone knew I had just gotten married and now suddenly I was starting a divorce. My bosses were understanding. My coworkers tried not to ask uncomfortable questions, but it was still strange. I started going out with friends again, something I hadn't done much during my relationship with Justin because his family always wanted us to be at their family events. I rediscovered my social life, basically. One Friday night, like 3 weeks after Andrew sent the papers to Justin, I went to a friend's birthday party. It was at a nice bar, nothing fancy but nice, and I was there having a good time, laughing for the first time in weeks, when suddenly I see Justin coming in through the door. He wasn't invited, obviously, but somehow he had found out where I was. Later, he found out he had been following my Instagram stories from a cousin's account. He looked disheveled, like he hadn't shaved in days and had dark circles, and he headed straight toward me with an expression that immediately scared me. He started yelling at me in the middle of the bar, in front of all my friends, saying I was a traitor. How dare I ask him for a divorce, that I had destroyed his family. People went quiet, everyone watching the scene, and I froze because I didn't know what to do. Then he saw there was a guy standing near me, a friend of my friend that I barely knew, and Justin immediately started accusing me of cheating on him, that's why I had gone to Hawaii, that I had probably been with other men. It was total madness. I was telling him to calm down, that I didn't know what he was talking about, but he kept yelling, and then he tried to approach the other guy like he was going to hit him. My friends intervened, someone called the bar manager, and they kicked Justin out of the place. I stayed there shaking, humiliated, angry, scared, all at the same time. My friend Kristen, who was also at the party, took me outside, made me take deep breaths, and told me, "This has to stop. This is harassment now." She was right. This had gone too far. That night, when I got to my parents' house, I took my phone and did something I never thought I would do. I called Janice. Yes, the mother-in-law from hell, the one who had started this whole mess. When she answered, with that condescending voice she always used with me, I told her very clearly and very calmly that if Justin approached me, my friends, or my family again, I was going to request a restraining order. I explained that a restraining order would be on his permanent record, which could affect his work in finance, where background checks are super important. I told her I didn't want to do that, but I would do it without hesitation if she didn't control her son. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Janice, for the first time since I had known her, had nothing to say. She just mumbled something about talking to Justin, and hung up. 2 days later, Andrew called me to tell me Justin had signed the divorce papers. Without fighting, without asking for anything, he just signed them. I think the threat of the restraining order and the possible consequences for his career finally made him understand this was serious, and there was no going back. The divorce was finalized like 3 months later. Andrew handled everything. I just had to show up to sign some additional documents, and that was it. It was the shortest divorce Andrew had been part of. He told me, considering the marriage had lasted 1 day. We laughed about that, though it was kind of a sad laugh. When everything was officially over, I felt huge relief, but also a weird sadness. Not about Justin specifically, but about the idea of what I thought my life was going to be, and that turned out to be something completely different. I moved into my own apartment 4 months ago. Small, but it's mine and nobody tells me what to do in it. I went back to therapy, something I should have done a long time ago, and I'm working on understanding why I always put others' needs before my own, why I needed so much approval. All that. My therapist is great and has helped me a lot to rebuild my self-esteem. Last week, I ran into Justin on the street, completely by accident. I was leaving a coffee shop and he was going in. We looked at each other for a second. It was super awkward, and I thought he was going to say something, but he just shook his head and kept walking. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even curiosity about how he was doing. It was just like seeing a stranger who happens to look like someone you knew a long time ago. My parents are still incredible. As always, my mom asks me every week if I'm okay, if I need anything, and my dad invites me to dinner every Sunday. Kristen is still my rock, the person who knows me better than anyone. Pam and I follow each other on social media, and from time to time we send each other messages. There's something comforting in knowing you're not alone in having gone through something like that. Did I learn anything from all this? I guess so. I learned it's okay to set boundaries, that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because it comes wrapped in the form of family. I learned that love shouldn't make you feel small or less than, and that if someone really loves you, they're not going to allow others to treat you badly. I learned that sometimes the hardest decision is the right one, and that defending your dignity is worth more than keeping the peace. Do I regret marrying Justin? Honestly, yes and no. I regret not having seen the red flags earlier, ignoring my instinct so many times, but I don't regret going to Hawaii that day, leaving that ring on the table, choosing my happiness over the approval of people who were never going to value me anyway. That decision saved me from years of misery. I'm sure of that. Now I'm focused on myself, on rebuilding my life the way I want it. I go out with friends, travel when I can. I'm considering adopting a cat, something Justin never let me do because his mom was allergic and what if she wanted to visit us? I'm learning to be happy being alone, to not need anyone else's validation to feel complete. And honestly, I feel freer now than at any other time in my adult life. It was a high price, yes, but it was completely worth it.